Good morning, everyone. Today is February 13th. We are here for the Pension Subcommittee, and welcome. Senator Folden, you're up. Senate Bill 388.
So, Madam Chair, esteemed colleagues of B&T, for the record, William Folden, State Senator representing Frederick County. I have before you today SB 388. SB 388 deals with forfeiture of benefits for certain actions conducted by state employees in their retirement, or if those actions were also, if they were occurring while they were employed, it would also include that. So what we've seen happen is there are bad actors who are state employees or retired state employees, and some of them have been troopers, some of them have been in different walks of life and responsibility in state government. And what this bill simply states is if you commit one of the qualifying crimes, child sex offense, something to that degree, or others, that if you were enrolled in the state employee pension system, that excluding the part that your contributions, that you would forfeit any future payments. I don't think we should be rewarding those that prey upon our vulnerable or commit these certain acts to fund or assist in their endeavors. So the bill is, the crime must have been committed while the public employee was an active member of their retirement or pension system, and only the service credit in the system in which the public employee was a member of at the time they committed the crime is eligible for forfeiture. I've spoken with or reached out to some of the unions that are affected by this, and reached out to the AFL-CIO, didn't hear back from them, and reached out to the others, AFSCME, AFT Maryland, Maryland Troop Association, MSCA, USM, UMB. You'll see that some people, the Maryland retired school personnel, submitted their request or their opposition to this. And the only group that actually responded, MSCA and UMB, they've been responsive and very respectful, but non-committal. And the Troopers Association, they did respond back via their representative through lobbying. But that was the extent of the dialogue. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, but I would respectfully ask for a favorable report on SB 388 to keep our community safer and hold those accountable and not continue to have Maryland be a part of financing these illegal activities. And I would ask for your favorable report.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Senator Lewis-Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would the individual be entitled to the portion of the pension that they invest?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Bailey.
Just I want to say thank you, Senator, for bringing the bill. I am curious to see a lot of times in these systems, the family members of the police officer or the teacher would be covered by the state benefits, whether they be children or they be, a spouse. And if we strip the benefits from the individual, how does it affect the dependent children or the spouse?
Well, obviously, the dependents would also be affected because that would be a removal of those benefits under this, how it's written now. The intent is to obviously curb anyone that would do these illegal activities from doing them, and understanding that it doesn't just impact them, it impacts others. So yeah, it would be also removed from them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? All right, this
Thank
concludes
you.
the hearing for Senate Bill 388. Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
You too. Senate Bill 457. Welcome, Ann. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the Pension Subcommittee. For the record, Senator Michael Jackson, representing District 27, on behalf of Senate Bill 457. I will have brief remarks on this bill and 4 or 5 others before I hand them over to Ms. Gothard. Senate Bill 457 sets up a work group in the state retirement agencies to study requirements and processes for transfers of member service between state and local retirement pension systems to make recommendations to improve the process of transfers between the systems. And with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Gothard. And just for the record, for those of you all who have served on this committee or who have engaged in such matters, this has been an ongoing challenge that this committee has been working on for a number of years, and we are slowly but surely walking it down how we come to some sort of reconciliation of this matter. So, Ms. Gothard.
I thank you, Senator. I don't have much more to add to that. As the senator pointed out, this title that addresses transfers between systems is a disaster right now. It is almost impossible to read. This committee, or this work group, would include us, state retirement. It would include, we're hoping, representatives from Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Howard County pension systems, so we can get their input. It would include representatives from AFSCME and also from legislative services. So we'd be getting input from a lot of the stakeholders who are impacted by this title.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Senator Lewis-Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Teachers, should they be part of the work group?
Well, that's, they would be included with the Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and
Okay.
Howard County. It would be up to MACO to decide if they wanted to have representatives from the teacher systems. Well, the teacher systems actually are represented. I'm sorry, where is my mind this early? The teachers are represented by the state system, so we're on there. We're their representative.
Okay,
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
And we'd ask for a favorable. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Senate Bill 612.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Pension Subcommittee. Michael Jackson, for the record, District 27, on behalf of Senate Bill 612. The Senate Bill 612 is a piece of legislation that sets up a mechanism for vested members of the state employee pension system, state police retirement system, correctional officer system, and law enforcement officers pension system to return to service. These returning individuals would also would be subject to the same benefit conditions prior to their departure from their initial service time. I will turn it over to Ms. Gothard.
Thank you, Senator. The reason we're asking for this is because this is a benefit that is already in place for certain members of the employees and teacher system. It is not in place for the public safety positions membership. So when these individuals, for instance, a correctional officer has vested, they were hired before 2011 and they have 5-year vesting and they leave and they come back 10 years later, we have to set up a new correctional officer system account for them. They have to vest all over again, even though they were already vested when they left. This will correct that so they would have the same benefits that the employees and teachers members do. There is one provision of this bill, though, that we thought would be helpful to bring in individuals, to apply to individuals in the non-contributory benefit for the employee system and the contributory benefit tier of the, well, subject to those benefits. What we found is we can't say with any certainty how many individuals would be impacted by that. So this could have a significant impact on the employer contribution. For this particular group, they're all municipal employees. They are not state employees. We're going to look at this over the interim and come up with a good number and see if we can't find, if it's big, if we can't find a comparable, workable solution that is not going to impact the municipal budgets.
And just to add, we're obviously looking for a favorable report. Again, this is another step in the right direction to try to reconcile our many systems. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senate bills, are there any questions on this piece of legislation? All right, that concludes Senate Bill 612. Let's move on to Senate Bill 692.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Pension Subcommittee. Michael Jackson on behalf of District 27, on behalf of Senate Bill 692. This piece of legislation makes a few clerical changes for reporting within the state retirement and pension system, and particularly clarifies a few provisions for eligibility of the Deferred Retirement Option Program. The legislation would do a few things. It would change the annual reporting dates. It would change the reporting date from December 1st to December 31st for the State Retirement Pension Board of Trustees to submit their corresponding report to the Budget and Taxation Committee, House Appropriations Committee, and the Joint Committee on Pensions. It would also alter the language for members of the DROP program to modify the language from eligibility service to a more clear employment in the position eligible for membership in the state police retirement system. Again, this legislation is largely clerical, and I will turn it over to Ms. Gothrop.
Thank you, Senator. The reason we're asking for this bill is because the law provides right now that eligible troopers may participate in the drop for a period equal to the difference between 32 years and the member's creditable service when they join the drop. To determine how a member's creditable service is earned, you get a month of creditable service every time you contribute. So if you don't contribute in a month, you don't get creditable service for that month. The maximum creditable service that a trooper can earn is 28 years. Prior to 2020, troopers contributed until they retired. So they can't earn service credit after 28 years prior to 2020, but they would continue to make contributions, so they would have 32 years of creditable service, even though they were only having a benefit based on 28 years. In 2020, legislation was introduced to say, since you're not earning a benefit after 28 years, your benefit can't be calculated on that. We're going to not make you, the legislature said, we're not going to make you make contributions after 28 years. That means, though, after 28 years, no more creditable service is earned. To enter drop, the drop period that you can have, you technically have to leave after 32 years, or the difference between 32 years and 28. The way the bill is drafted, since you're not earning credit after 28 years, you can work long after 32 years now and still be eligible to be in drop, which is contrary to what we believe the intent was of the legislature when they created the drop. The way the bill is amended, it corrects that, and it states that it's based on 32 years minus your years of employment. It breaks the link with creditable service and just how long you were employed. So this goes back to the way the drop was when it was introduced. And if you have 32 years, you cannot enter drop.
And Madam Chair, we asked for a favorable report, and I think that the members see why I have Ms. Gothrop sitting next to me. So,
Are there any questions? All right, thank you very much. We will move on to Senate Bill 693.
thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senator Michael Jackson, representing District 27 on behalf of Senate Bill 693. 693 is a piece of legislation that changes to current reemployment earnings. Is a piece of legislation that makes very simple changes to the current reemployment earnings limitations. The bill clarifies the maximum average final compensation that certain retirees in the state retirement and pension system is based on the minimum annual salary on a standard pay scale of January 1st of the preceding calendar year. Ms. Gothrop will go into this further.
Thank you, Senator.
We're asking for a favorable report, by the way.
Current law provides that if you retire on a service retirement or an ordinary disability, that's a non-line of duty disability, from the employees, teachers, or correctional officer system, and your AFC, your average final compensation, and that's your 3 highest years or your 5 highest years, depending on when you joined the system. If that AFC was less than $25,000, you're not subject to any earnings limitations if you're reemployed by a participating employer. Accidental or special disability, those are our line of duty disability retirees. While they're not subject to an earnings limit, they are subject to a temporary suspension of their benefit if they return to employment and their gross salary exceeds their AFC at the time of retirement. Their disability retirement benefit will remain temporarily suspended as long as what they're making exceeds their AFC. So for example, an accidental disability retiree with an AFC of $21,400 who's reemployed by a participating employer at a gross annual salary of $21,500 will have their entire pension temporarily suspended while they're reemployed in this position because they're earning more than $21,400. That $21,400, again, that's the average of their 3 highest years that they were making as a state employee. So this example is actually a real case that we found that called this issue to our attention. The retiree not only had an AFC less than $25,000, their annual gross salary in this example was less than $25,000. So this bill, as Senator Jackson said, it's going to change the exemption from $25,000 to the minimum state salary. So whenever the minimum state salary is increased, this exemption will flow with that. Currently, that minimum salary is $35,000. So this individual in particular will not be subject to the earnings limitation going forward.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, this concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 693. Let's move on to Senate Bill 862.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senator Michael Jackson, District 27, on behalf of Senate Bill 862. The legislation makes a few changes to the administrative fee structure of the general administrative structure. I'm going to start over. How about that? This legislation makes a few changes to the administrative fee structure and the general administrative structure within the state retirement and pension system and the state retirement agency. The bill will require the Board of Trustees of the state retirement system to certify certain employer contribution rates each year to repeal an existing requirement that funds certain administrative and operational expenses. Ms. Gothard will discuss further.
So there are 3 agencies who are on pins and needles waiting for this bill to pass: State Retirement, Legislative Services, and DBM. This will change how we fund our operating expenses. It will take it back to where we were before we had admin fees. With admin fees, this has been a nightmare trying to administer and reconcile between all 3 agencies what our operating expenses should be every year. By going back to the way we were prior to admin fees coming in the law, our actuary will determine a certain amount above the normal cost that's a component of our employer rate every year. They will include that for all employers, and we will then, when we get the money from employer contribution rates, we'll draw down our operating expenses again from the accumulation fund of the trust. That will begin in fiscal 27. I will note, though, that to address the funding of the agency's administrative expenses for fiscal year 26, this bill also provides that the agency shall be paid out of the system's accumulation fund and not by any of the participating employers. So our expenses for this year are projected, for next fiscal year, fiscal 26, are projected to be $32.5 million. And given that the agency will fund these expenses just from the system's accumulation fund without any reimbursement from participating employers, the system's unfunded liability will increase slightly.
And with that, Madam Chair, we ask for a favorable report.
Yes,
and we
please, on
stand
this
for
one.
questions if necessary. And this is very important for us, as they all are, but this definitely.
Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, we conclude Senate Bill 862. Thank you
Madam
very
Chair.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we wanted to have a discussion of Senate Bill 396, if folks could call that up, and then I could ask, are we off?
Nice, Mike. Yes, Senate Bill 396, this is kind of an unusual circumstance for this subcommittee. This bill was heard before full committee. It's got 2 components. There's components related to line of duty death benefits that the state pays for certain public safety workers. And then there are also some pension component pieces. And so those are the 2 pieces that I was going to walk you all through this morning just to get the subcommittee's input on that. And so basically what the bill does is it's adding in the pension system for the disability provisions, It's adding in a presumption for awarding a disability if there's documentation that an individual is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I would note in the testimony submitted by the system, they have not been experiencing any issues for the window of time they looked at where individuals seeking disability based on post-traumatic stress disorder have been denied. I think actually in pretty much all cases, they've been granted. So the system had some concerns about adding a presumption for a condition when there's not really any documented issues of members having issues obtaining disability awards. Additionally, that is a piece that is driving the fiscal note that you'll see about additional $4 million a year in required annual contributions. The other piece of the bill that is pertinent for this subcommittee is there are provisions that would authorize 911 specialists to become participating governmental units in the law enforcement officers' pension system. This has been an issue that you all have seen a few times in the past few years. The advice from system, based on advice they've received from their tax counsel, has been consistent that doing so would create likely tax qualification issues for the law enforcement officers plan based on the federal tax code and the nature of the work that the 911 specialists are doing. So it's not a reflection on the value of what the worker's doing. It's just it's a tax issue that could create problems whereby and again, to stress the concerns around that, the tax qualification of the plan allows for the pre-tax treatment of all the earnings of all the members and contributions. So there could be significant financial consequences for losing a tax qualified status on that issue. So that's something that the system and this committee has taken very seriously in the past. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through those two pieces. The remainder of the bill will be something that full committee will be weighing in on, as well as JPR is actually secondary on this too, I believe, for those first two pieces.
Are there any questions? Senator Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Philip, for the briefing. This committee has been met with the question to add certain members to the pension system in the past. It's not an easy decision but we've had to make for the solvency and in particular because of the IRS implications. So I do appreciate you bringing that before us. The presumption law is something that at least me and at least one other member here have dealt with that over the decades and having a particular understanding of what that means when there are no visible signs of trauma or stress. So I appreciate that. I think we'll digest, but I stand consistent on the IRS piece to ensure. That doesn't mean the bill is not workable, but I think we want to stay consistent, in that particular matter going forward. That would be my recommendation, but it's just me right now. Thanks.
I assume you mean consistent following tax counsel's advice.
Yes. Yes, Madam Chair, as you saw before. I don't go far without counsel.
Thank
Yes.
you. Senator Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I echo my colleagues' sentiments as we look at this. But I do want to, if this is the appropriate time, Philip, to explain to me the change in this bill where it includes suicide.
Yes, so those are changes relevant to so there's currently a state benefit for certain law enforcement officers who die in the course of duty. I think you all actually had legislation last year increasing the amounts and then tying them to consumer price indexes. So the bill on that piece is adding 911 specialists, and current law has some restrictions on whether the death of the member was, I believe it's, the language was intentional, effectively carving out suicide. The bill has provisions that would, in instances when an individual is diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and the diagnosis was due to the nature and performance of the individual's duties and the death occurs by suicide, that would be an eligible occurrence for payment of that benefit. And then there's also additional changes clarifying the authority of the Secretary of Public Safety and Correctional Services to award benefits in instances where there's a suicide. So it's creating a situation where there's, I guess, an exemption to the exemption. So if there's documentation that it's, I guess it'd be an instance where the suicide itself is considered effectively job-related in the same way where somebody would get in a car accident and die. I think that's the concept there.
So, and not that I want to make light of the traumatic circumstances around a suicide, and I think it's very serious that we look at it, but I just want to make sure that's not just changing that part of the law for 911 specialists. That would be changing that for all of police officers and everybody covered. Is that the
That
way
is
I
correct.
read
So
that?
yeah, that would be the full list of eligible positions.
But they would have had to have been treated for some form of post-traumatic stress. It would not just be automatic if someone committed suicide.
Correct. The provisions in there do require diagnosis by a licensed medical or mental health professional, and within that diagnosis that it was due or related to the nature and performance of the individual's duties.
This is a very, very complicated bill. We've put so many parts in here.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very difficult to talk about this. There's some good parts. There's some other parts that I think are very problematic. I think this is going to lead to us for further discussions before we even get back to the full committee.
Yeah, and like I said, it's kind of a unique situation because, like, you know, that piece of the bill is more within the full B&T jurisdiction and in addition JPR, but you also have these other pension-related pieces that have some issues that you've dealt with before.
So is it correct to say that the pension-related pieces are problematic for the reasons we have discussed?
Correct.
So one approach would be to remove the pension-related issues and then discuss at full committee, obviously with B&T and JPR.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's, if there is consensus on that, I think that's the best way to proceed. Senator Jackson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to add to that, I agree, obviously. But just to add to that, we have been trying to classify, set on the next generation 911 work group. We've been trying to get our 911 specialists, who are our first responders, to be classified fully as public safety folks. And we haven't gotten there yet. So we just need to tread lightly, make sure we don't miss a step anywhere. Because once you are in that public safety realm, there are a lot of other things that come with that as well. So, but for further discussion.
Any other questions or comments on Senate Bill 396? Senator Benson?
Who makes the determination as to what the final results are? Is there a medical team? What's in place?
For the death benefit?
Yes.
That is, I believe, it's the secretary, it's either DBM or public safety. I'd have to go back and check where this is drafted to. I can confirm that for you, but it's one of the two
Yeah,
of those.
that's very important. As the senator said, this really is complicated. It really is.
Definitely. All right, thank you. Are there any, Senator Bailey?
I just had another topic, not on this bill.
Is it related to another bill that we heard this morning?
Well, I just was in a position, we heard some bills today that we heard some of the urgency in some of those bills, and I didn't know if we were in a position to accept a motion on some of those bills.
I want to just double check on those, so
Okay.
in case some of them may need some tweaking by amendment.
I think we're not ready at this point to vote on them, so. All right, any other issues for the good of the order? This concludes the Pension Subcommittee hearing today. Thank you very much.